Hi, this is Smyslov, and we have here again a beautiful game of Mikhail Tal. This time he's playing against Vasily Smyslov during the Candidates Tournament of 1959. And in this same tournament Bobby Fischer also participated, and I showed you in one of my previous videos one of the games between Tal and Fischer. And I forgot to mention that Bobby Fischer at that time was only 16 years old. That means that he was still growing in his playing strength. He was only a young man. About these games in this tournament against Fischer, the games against Fischer, Tal said that something like, at that moment Tal was already Tal, but Fischer was not Fischer yet, meaning that his own development was already to the top. You know, he already had learned a lot and had lots of experience, but Fischer was still in his young age, still growing. This game against Smyslov is a very typical game of Tal. Typical in the sense that Tal is known for his sacrifices, and some of those sacrifices are not very correct, very sound, but still they work. And why is that? Some people say that Tal was a player who had such wonderful calculating skills, but sometimes he simply took a risk by sacrificing a piece, knowing that it probably would not be correct completely, but he simply trusted his intuition and trusted the fact that in the rest of the game most opponents would miss some tactical line, because there are so many lines to calculate. Let's have a look at what this game brought. e4, c6, so Tal is playing with white, and Smyslov plays the Caro-Kann defense. Now d3 by white is a slow move, but soon we see that more dynamics come into the game. e5, knight to f3, knight to d7, and now the move that looks maybe a bit strange, the move d3 to d4. By advancing this pawn, he loses a tempo, that's true, but on the other hand he makes this choice to play d3 d4 after black has advanced his two central pawns. So the pawns of black already are on d5 and e5, and this means that by playing d3 d4 white can open the center completely. d takes e4 was played, knight takes e4, the pawn on d4 was taken, and now queen takes d4. Black continued developing, knight to f6, and white plays bishop to g5. Bishop e7 is played, white castles queenside and black castles kingside. So we have now all the ingredients that are necessary to have an exciting game. Opposite side castling, the center is totally opened, and there hasn't been not even one trade of pieces. Only two pawns have been traded, but the light pieces and the heavy pieces, they're all still on the board. So this must become a very exciting game. White plays knight to d6 now. A strong square for the knight, he cannot be chased away by a pawn of the opponent, and is looking at this f7 pawn. Later the bishop can go to c4 and have also an attack against this f7 pawn. Queen to e5 was played by Smyslov. Bishop to c4, now b5, and Tal didn't retreat his bishop immediately to b3. No, he played the bishop from g5 to d2. The bishop now here doesn't have the same effect that it had before in the game, because it's not longer pinning this knight. So Tal uses now gives this bishop a new task, thus to attack the queen on a5. Later this bishop could be used on this long diagonal, for example. Queen to a6, the knight goes to f5 now, attacking the bishop on e7. The bishop goes to d8, and now comes this sacrifice, queen to h4. So Tal is sacrificing this bishop on c4. And about this game, later Bobby Fischer said, and I'll quote him now, he said, against Smyslov in 1959 candidates tournament, he gave away a bishop for no recompense, just to develop an attacking formation, and eventually won the game. It was one of the most unusual sacrifices I had ever seen, typical of the daring that characterizes this 25-year-old Russian player. So this is the typical style of Mikhail Tal. Black took here on c4, and white continued with queen to g5, attacking g7, threatening mate in 1. Knight to h5, defending this g7 square, and offering to return the material. But now if white now takes here on h5, then the next defender arrives, knight to f6, and now it becomes very difficult for white to continue the attack, because if the queen goes again to g5, then black can trade one of his passive pieces for one of the attacking pieces of white. So here the more pieces are exchanged, the more power, attacking power, goes away. So that means that this is quite a good idea to play knight to h5. And what happened here is that white didn't take on h5. Now Tal continued attacking by playing knight to h6 check.